Welcome to Ability Fierce. This is Michael Astor. This is the show where we're going to promote a revolution in abilities. And what I'm talking about is there's a lot of stuff available for disabled people in New York, and most people don't even know about it. And when you get it, you theoretically it works, and then you find out it doesn't work, or it's supposed to work, but it doesn't work on time. So what we're trying to promote with this show is that every person with disabilities gets what they're entitled to in a timely and dignified manner. And dignified is important, but timely is important too, because as kids grow up, as kids do things, the system has to be agile so that they're not left behind because of bureaucratic messes, which happens all too much. Today, my guest is John Camacho. He's the president of District 75 Council. Now, District 75, that's a school district, but it's a special district. What do I mean? It's not in one place. District 75 is all over the city. And John is going to talk to me. John also is the father of a disabled child who has cerebral palsy and multiple disabilities. And we're going to talk about the issues that we face. And that's the idea of this show. Every week, I'm going to bring on advocates, disabled people, and we're going to talk about it so that information is out there and we're going to start a discussion. And that's the first step to having a revolution in abilities. And we'll talk more about this, but I want to get to John. Tell me a little bit about being the president of the Council for District 75.
I am the president of the citywide Council for District 75.
Mm-hmm.
In New York City, every child has to, by law, be educated. So, long time ago, they created this District 75, which is different from special ed. It's a specialized education for certain particular conditions. Cerebral palsy, you have Down syndrome, you have multiple disabilities, intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We're not geographical.
Mm-hmm.
It's a citywide council, a citywide district, educational district. So, for example, we have children who sometimes live in Manhattan, they go to Queens or vice versa. We have children in the Bronx. Sometimes they travel to school in Manhattan. So that makes it very special. We have about 256 schools, I believe. We have, as of October 2018, 25,399 students from K to 12.
That's a large population.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with that comes parents who don't know when you first start this, you hit a wall because you're not prepared for this.
Right. Nobody, I don't know about your son, but my son was premature.
So what's that?
6 months. And nobody told me about this, anything. And, you know, you have to learn all this stuff. And this is what bothers me, is you have to become an expert. And I become an expert, you became an expert. Everybody who is involved in the system has to become an expert in the system, or they don't get even a percentage of what they're entitled to. And I don't think that should be the case. So, but please go ahead.
Well, just like your son, my son was very premature.
Mm-hmm.
He was born at 27 weeks gestation.
Mm-hmm.
He weighed 1 pound, 25 ounces. The Dylan was supposed to be born in December.
Mm-hmm.
He's born in September.
Mm-hmm.
Born in September.
Mm-hmm.
So in November, we had this evaluation with people from Orlando region.
Mm-hmm.
The diagnosis was he is age appropriate, which blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
How could a child be age appropriate who at that time in November he wasn't even supposed to be born yet?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, we were fortunate. The neurologist who checked Dylan, who was part of the evaluating team, he said to us, Mr. Camacho, because of the physical aspect, because you can see his plaques, you can see his X-rays. Mm-hmm. And there's certain, there are 3 little specks of dead cells, and his right hemisphere is is a little small. His left hemisphere is a little smaller than the right hemisphere. So, by looking at his CAT scans, all his medical history and his physical, you can see they cannot deny any of the services you can have for everything. So I went back and I fought with them, and I told them, what I thought about him. They reevaluated Dylan, and they gave him everything. They gave him speech, physical therapy, occupational therapy.
Right. Now that seems to be a pattern.
It is a pattern. It is an unfortunate pattern, because if you see the need, and it is something that is really bothersome, because the fact that our children or some children are born with disabilities, and from that point on, they're not going to have the same opportunities as other children. And then on top of that, they are treated as second-class citizens. I mean, it's our children might not understand that what we do. So then, like you said, we become advocates, and we become fierce advocates.
Well, we hope you become fierce,
Yes, but it all depends. I think it's also a matter of culture. It's cultural. For example, I know for a fact that in Asian countries, to have a child with disabilities is shameful.
I've seen that, yeah.
Okay? And they hide them, and they don't want people to see them, I put my child, front and center. Not because I want people to understand that they are. Listen, let's go back into history. In ancient Greece, these parents used to kill the babies who were not quote unquote perfect, and that was because obvious reasons. They couldn't battle. In case of an invasion, they were a burden to them, to the warriors of this place. 1,000 years later, there's still some remnants of that thought. Okay, some people, they don't want to see it. Some cultures, they hide it.
No, disabled people make a lot of able people uncomfortable.
Yes. But you know what? And then you have certain things that give us hope. Like you mentioned District 75. District 75, if you have a child, and I'm talking only from my own experience, if you and probably other parents will identify. If you have a child and you don't know if your child is going to survive past the age of 5, because that is the possibility, right? And then your child begins to strive, and they tell you, and something that I admire Dr. Arwell, his pediatrician. He said, when Dylan was 2 months in the hospital, before he was released to us to take him home, he said, don't ever listen to people, because they don't know what the future is going to bring to you. Nobody can tell you if he's going to walk or he's not going to walk, whether he's going to talk. Nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball.
Ready? Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Ready? Make your daddy glad to have had such a lad.
Ready? You're right that it's not for the institution to identify what the reasonable accommodation is. It should be the accommodation that best suits the individual.
Everybody over there, and we won't come back till it's over there. Everybody over there.
Do you need an umbrella to take with you?
Yeah, let's take an umbrella. Wait, we have umbrellas, right?
My son Nick needs help getting out of bed, dressing, bathing, going to the bathroom, and even walking. But that didn't keep him from getting into college.
So most likely I may come back with you.
Cool.
And then just start the first shift, unless we work out something with someone else over the break.
His disability did, however, almost dash his dreams of living in the dorms with the other students. This is a historic moment. You finish your first semester.
I don't think it's that historic.
On our way home, we stopped by Westchester Disabled on the Move to thank them for offering to stage a protest on Nick's behalf this summer, though we didn't end up needing it.
160, right?
Did
I meet you?
This is his first.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't
Maybe
think
I just
so.
have
Nick,
that face.
Nick was the young man who wanted to
Oh, I
purchase.
saw you on TV.
They want him to experience campus life as a freshman, just like everybody else without disabilities.
19-year-old with cerebral palsy
Aims to be a stand-up comedian after going to college.
He recently learned his dorm request was denied.
Purchase wouldn't work with us to make this happen. They studied our request for a suite to house Nick and his aide for months, only to shoot it down weeks before school started, when it was essentially too late to secure the other aides and supports Nick needed. That's when we decided to fight.
You would think a campus that wants to welcome students with disabilities would put those students' needs at the top of the list.
So de Blasio was very supportive of your struggle too.
He tweeted and said colleges should be throwing their doors open to have a kid like Nick Astor.
Late Wednesday, Governor Cuomo chimed in, asking SUNY Purchase to find a way to make it work.
Thanks, Governor, but isn't the bar set way too high if this is what it takes to get a kid like Nick into college?
I don't understand their human opposition to providing the accommodations.
You know, their thinking is that if you can't perform and do the work, then you shouldn't be in that program. But wait a minute, accommodations. You know that they're also being sued.
Have you encountered any barriers?
They're like unpaved roads that can get a little choppy.
So you can't get to certain of the social or cultural events that happen in some of the buildings.
Like if I want to go to a friend's dorm on the 3rd floor, I can't because 3 of the dorms don't have elevators. I've really shut down my brain at this point.
And you've signed a lot of those ones this week.
Even with all the accommodations, Nick can't just focus on school. He has a staff of 8 to manage, and being disabled means always being an advocate.
Their thing with fire safety is they have these areas of refuge in buildings where there are no elevators.
The students who work with Nick have him involved in campus life in a way that many people with disabilities are not. He's getting good grades, he's on the school senate, learning what it's like living without parents around, and generally having a pretty great time. Well, except for all the red tape.
Oh no, there's more!
You're to be congratulated, Nick, but you're a fighter, which is very cool. How's your comedy doing?
Pretty good. Better than my fighting. It's real funny because Vic works for me actually. He's my student aide. And that's how, this gig is how he got this job. So I scratch my back, you scratch yours, am I right? I'm talking to him on the interview and he's like, yo, I do this thing called PLN. And I could get you on there. And I was like, you're hired.
So this doctor comes in, have this little kid here, my son, less than a year. Mm-hmm. He goes, he opens his legs and my son has, problems. And, the first thing he said is, well, we'll do a surgery. Because of his right side hemisphere being smaller, the right hemisphere being compromised, his right side, his whole right side has a high muscle tone. Mm-hmm. So he cannot, if you see him, unless he's totally relaxed, he relaxes his whole body. Mm-hmm. But up until now, his whole right side, he cannot use it. He's a little tense, a little high muscle. So he went and he checked and he said, well, because of his lower extremities, we'll do a surgery. We'll cut the little tendon. Talk to my assistant, and then we'll do surgery in about 6 months. It was before he was born. So I had a little talk with my wife, and my wife said,
"Yeah, it's a little early."
Not only that, but surgeries are permanent. You cannot go there. You cannot undo. So at the same time, he was receiving physical therapy at home. Mm-hmm. And this gentleman who was doing the physical therapy says, you know what? There's this doctor, all my kids all the kids that he served go to this doctor, or almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
He's the next doctor. Why? He's a neurosurgeon. So he went. It took us 6 months. 6 months, literally, to get, from time that we called for the appointment. They gave us an appointment 6 months after. And he took about 45 minutes. He talked to us. He asked us about the condition. He really learned who Dylan was. And then he examined him. He stood him up. He did the flex things with his extremities. Mm-hmm. He said, "You know what? This is what we're going to do. We're going to do therapy. Mm-hmm. This is the first thing we're going to do. We need therapy. By the time he stands up, we're going to give him braces because his feet were done. So we're going to give braces, and we're going to make sure that his muscles, because of his condition, his bones are going to be growing at a faster rate than his muscles. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do the therapy so his muscles will adapt or catch up faster. If that doesn't work, when you've hit a plateau, then we use Botox to relax the muscles of his calf. And, if need be, his arms too.
Right.
And then, if nothing works, by the age of 16, 17, we'll do the surgery. How about that? We're so happy. We love this doctor. Again, one hospital and the other hospital within the same city. New York was hospitals in New York City, both hospitals in Manhattan. Okay, the difference, if you take one train to go from one hospital to the other, is about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Different opinions, different approaches. So you have to find that. And sometimes what we parents of children with disabilities have is that we want, we take doctors' opinions or diagnoses at face value. Go and look for a second opinion. Go and look for a third. Find someone that you can hook up with.
Right. I agree with you. But when you're in this situation, you just want to have someone who could tell you what to do. I mean, a lot of people do. It's sort of like the doctor says it. You want to believe in the doctor, and that's going to be all right. When you start going into the second opinion thing, now you have to make decisions because they say bad things about the other doctor. And you're not prepared. And it's funny was I went by accident to some meeting for care managers. Okay. And I was the only parent there. It was all care managers. It's good to hear what they say to each other when they're by themselves. And they said, and when the family won't admit that the kid has a problem, and like I could say that about me, like they won't admit he needs a wheelchair. And I'm like, let the family come to that understanding when they come to it. Because if you beat the odds, if you are the exception, that's a beautiful thing. And if you believe at the beginning they're not going to make it, they're not going to do it, you've lost before you even started.
And he goes back, and you see, I will never forget Dr. Agarwal's words. Don't let anyone tell you what your son cannot do. When Dylan was just beginning to take steps, in one of the schools that he went, and by the way, I want to be very clear, I'm very thankful to District 75. District 75 gave my son the opportunity and gave him the instructions. He reads, he talks, he does math, he does things that I don't think in any other setting he would have been able to achieve. Maybe, maybe not, but that focus education in District 75 that makes children like mine. My child will never be able to be an athlete. That's a fact. My child, might never. I don't say will never, but I said might never be able to go to college or to finish college. We don't know.
Right.
We don't know. That's the whole point. But then you have people who are quote unquote in the field, who are experts, who tell you no, he cannot do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this physical therapist in one of the schools in District 75. And you have to take the good with it.
Mm-hmm.
And this young lady who was a physical therapist, she had her degree in physical therapy, and she just went and got it. And this particular school, all children in District 75 is on the second floor. And in case of fire, they have this special room that is, that's the first room that the fire department goes and take the children in this. So it's, very safe. They care about the children, which is something that is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And this young lady came to me, and she said, well, he has to use a walker.
Mm-hmm.
My son was, he was doing the steps. He always had a one-to-one part because of, we were afraid that if he falls, hits his head, and then, things get worse. So he always had a one-to-one part.
Mm-hmm.
And just to make sure that he doesn't, harm himself.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't harm because, the kids may push him,
Right.
things.
Schools are a crazy place, yeah.
So, and she said, well, he won't be able to go to the farm because he's not a walker. I said, excuse me. Well, I think that, I went to this concept. Listen, you know what? I'll tell you. Let me call his orthopedic surgeon. By the way, he goes to China for free on his own time. He performs 20 surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's the head of the New York Presbyterian. So if you tell him he agrees with you, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I already talked to his orthopedic surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And he told us, don't give him reasons to be to depend on assisted
devices. Yeah.
Devices. So just let him be mobile.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only way his brain is going to. Because cerebral palsy, by the way, it's a very, and it is funny. I'm jumping all over the place because it's a very broad subject. It's a very touchy subject.
Wow.
Cerebral palsy is an umbrella term.
Mm-hmm.
It all means that the body doesn't do what the brain orders the body to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have different diagnoses also, but that's
right.
So the doctor said, listen, his body, his brain wants to walk.
Mm-hmm.
His body doesn't make the connection. So let him walk. Let his body get used to it. Okay, no walkers, no canes, crutches, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I called Dr. Warren and I said, listen, you have this physical therapy, this PT. I want to speak to you. I just handed her the phone.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, she just quiet and
this is another thing, is that there are PTs and there are OTs, and some are very good and some are not, just like any other job. And we had one where this woman came and she was like, I'm the expert because I'm an OT. And I'm like, I'm kind of an expert. And she said, he should be in a wheelchair. I said, we don't do wheelchairs. Now, I got into trouble because a lot of people need wheelchairs, and there's nothing wrong with it if that's the thing. But if you can, it's something powerful about someone moving under their own power. People go, hey, he's trying, he's working hard. Whereas if they're just passive, they go, oh, poor dear. You know what I mean? And that's a big difference. And again, not to diminish anybody whose kid needs the wheelchair or the power chair or whatever helps they need. But I'm saying is, the more you can insert the kid into society, the better it is for the kid and for society.
Of course. And it goes back to, before I start this next statement, I just want to make a parenthesis here. The question with that, in my case, the walker, in your case with the wheelchair, who does it benefit? It doesn't benefit the child. It doesn't benefit our children. It's for the convenience of the PT, OT, and
the school. Yeah.
And trust me, they are great people. They are great people, but the lower percentages will tell you that not is never 100%. You don't get 100% of the best. At most you can get 90-95%. You know what I'm saying? And you and I will run into this 5% that we go crazy over this, because you have to look after the child. The child. And that's one of the things that it really is really important. The child, because we already listen. We are living our lives. We have done what we wanted to do, mistakes and all, But these children, because these are our children, age 20, still a child. They still have the full life ahead of them, and that is what we should concentrate on. And with the district, citywide council for District 75, we have to concentrate not only on those who are aging out, but the children who are just coming in, have parents who come and tears, and they don't know what to do, and identify the same way you will identify with them, because there is no manual. About first, there's no manual to be a parent, and it's definitely not a manual about being a parent of a child with a disability. Going back to the education part, District 75. There are parents who do need the assistance with the children in District 75. But for some reason, there is this stigma, there's this bad connotation about District 75. Believe it or not, District 75 has a Montessori school in Queens. It is, they teach the children. There's a pool, but it's for some reason, is this jam that is a secret, as opposed to taking that model and expanding it all over.
Okay.
Which is so good.
I just got the kill signal. We're a little over, so I'm just going to. I have to do my amazing camera setup here, and okay. So there's a lot of stuff more. Maybe John will come back, but I think I could edit something nice out of it. I wanted to learn more about his stuff at District 75, but we didn't have time. But there's a lot of good talking that we're getting, and I think that some parents can relate to this. And this is what I'm trying to do here, is open up a discussion, get the information out there, bring people on, just to put this out in the open. When I go out with Nicholas in Park Slope, where we live, I don't see any other kids with walkers. I rarely see kids in wheelchairs. And this is a problem. These people are being marginalized. They're being locked in, and we want to let them come out. And we don't want to freak people out or stuff, but we want people to, when you start talking to these kids, you realize that you see them differently, and that's really important. It doesn't happen if you don't see them. So thank you for joining us with Ability Fierce. This is our third show. I think we're kind of hitting our stride. Feel free to get in contact with us if you're interested in being on the show, if you have a tip, if there's something you'd like to hear about, and we'll see you next time.